On the first day, the room temperature for the Eagle Eye and the desktop weren't really showing any results yet, but for the 25 degrees Celsius Eagle Eye agar dish, you see little white dots and my streak lines. You can see them very clearly, and you didn't see nothing for the desktop swab, but for the 37 degree Eagle Eye, you see little white dots. You see the border is not very sharp edges, and for the H2O, there was little dots growing, white dots, and there was nothing growing for the desktop at 37 degrees Celsius. And for the Eagle Eye at 55 degrees Celsius and for the desktop at 55 degrees Celsius, there was nothing really growing. For the room temperature of the Eagle Eye on day 2, you can see the faintest of white streaks slash white lines, and on the desktop keyboard there was nothing growing yet. And for the 25 degrees Celsius, you can see that my streak lines are starting to run together more because it's growing, and there was still nothing really there for the desktop keyboard. And for the 37 degrees Celsius Eagle Eye, you see that it has grown in width and length, and the edges are wider. And for the desktop computer, you see a few little white dots growing. And for H2O, the little white dots have spread everywhere. And for the 55 degrees, nothing was really growing. That little brown mark at the bottom is just the burn because the petri dish kind of melted in the incubator. And there's nothing growing for the desktop computer either. On the third day for the 23 degrees Celsius agar plate for Eagle Eye, it got more distinct and it grew a lot, and you see more little white dots. For the desktop agar plate, you see two little white dots below the N in the word in and one below the letter I in library. And for the 25 degrees Celsius, you see that the lines start to run more together and looked a little smeared, and it became whiter and more distinct. For the desktop agar plate, you see three little white dots below the D and the E in desktop. As you can tell for the 37 degrees Celsius of the Eagle Eye agar plate, you can tell that the lines have grown and have ran more together, and you can see my streak marks, and the edges are a little more wider than the day before. And surprisingly, for the desktop keyboard at 37 degrees Celsius, you see that more bacteria cultures have started to grow, and some are different colors. And as you can see on the back, one of them at the top right behind the B is yellow, and the one in the middle is a little brown and has veins on the back. For my H2O sample, you see more little white dots, and my streak marks have become more distinct. For the 55 degrees Celsius, you can still see that there's nothing growing, but the agar plate, it has become a little more browner and yellower. And for the desktop 55 degrees Celsius, there's still nothing growing, and it's a little bit of a tint. Plus, it looks really cloudy. For day 4 for the Eagle Eye in the 23 degrees Celsius agar plate, you see that the lines are starting to run together more, and you don't see individual white dots. For the desktop, you only see the one white dot below the eye. And for the 25 degrees Celsius, you see a distinct white dot on the right side. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was contamination from the other students who touched my stuff. For the keyboard, you see a cluster of white dots below the D and the E in desktop. For the 37 degree Celsius Eagle Eye, you see that it just has grown a lot and it's starting to become less transparent. For the desktop keyboard, you see a lot more cultures and of bacteria growing, and you see some of them start to take their own color. And for the H2O, the same thing has been happening, just more white dots, and you can see my streak marks better. And for the 55 degrees Celsius, you see that nothing really changed yet. There's nothing growing. On the 5th day of my Eagle Eye sample at 23 degrees or room temperature, you can see that the lines are more blended together again. Just like at the 37 degrees Celsius Eagle Eye, it's just going way slower. For the desktop keyboard, you see that white dot below the eye has gotten bigger. And for the 25 degrees Celsius, you see that solid white dot has gotten more distinct, and not too much growth has happened, but the lines are starting to come more smudged together. And for the 25 degrees Celsius of the keyboard sample, you see that the clusters below the D and the E have gotten a little bigger. And for this 37 degree Celsius of my Equalize sample, you see that it has grown in width. By the way, it has gotten wider. And you see that all the cultures in this agar dish have gotten bigger and rounder. And the one in the middle has spread a lot more. And when you look on the back, it looks very veiny and very like shriveled up. And then the colors, the yellow colors of the two dots have gotten more vibrant. And for the water sample, nothing really changed. It's just more dots. And for the 55 degrees Celsius, nothing has grown, but for the desktop keyboard, I was wondering what that was at the top, and it turns out that my agar has shriveled up into a thin piece, and it melted to the top of the plate. On the final day, the Equalize for the 23 degrees Celsius agar plate is starting to look more like the 37 degree Equalize agar plate on the second or third day of observation. At the bottom of the letter I in library, the dot has gotten bigger. And for the 25 degrees Celsius Equalize, you see that the white dot has grown and becomes more distinct. And for the 25 degrees Celsius of the keyboard, the cluster of white dots have gotten bigger. Plus, there's a faint white dot in the center of the agar plate. For the 37 degrees Celsius Equalize agar plate, you see that all the lines have grown in width and they all kind of run together now. And for the desktop plate, you can see that the dots have gotten bigger and the one in the middle is more veinier, more shriveled up on the back. All the colors have gotten very vibrant, including the yellow, and even for the H2O for the 37 degrees Celsius, it has gotten a lot more populated with these white dots. And for the 55 degrees Celsius, you see that it's more golden brown or kind of a brownish tint to it. And for the last one, the desktop keyboard, the melted agar plate is still on the top of the plate, and it looks like something is starting to grow there now because I bet it got contaminated because probably somebody touched it.